Imagine walking into a crowded room. No one is raising their voice. There is no visible drama. To the average person, it is just a normal gathering. But the moment you step across the threshold, your brain has already finished scanning the entire architecture of the room. You catch the avoided glance between two people. You hear the microscopic tremor in a forced laugh. You detect the heavy, unspoken tension hiding beneath a perfectly normal sentence. You feel the invisible, fake energy in the air as clearly as a drop in temperature. To the outside world, you just look quiet. But inside your head, there is a massive, silent supercomputer running endless calculations. Your brain simply has no off switch. You cannot just enjoy the moment. You take every interaction home with you. You pick it apart. You analyze the 3-second pause before someone complimented your shirt. You dissect their tone, and you replay the scene in your mind again and again. You're the kind of person who can take one small, ambiguous silence and spin it into an entire universe of exhausting thoughts. Society, and the people who do not understand you, call this anxiety. They tell you that you are overthinking. They look at your exhaustion and tell you that you are broken, that you need to relax, that you are creating problems out of thin air. You look at your inability to just be normal, and you diagnose yourself with a defect. But listen to my voice in the dark, and let me shatter that illusion right now. You are not broken. Your over-awareness is not a mental flaw, and it is not a disease. It is a highly evolved, razor-sharp intelligence that was forged in the fires of your own survival. You are simply awake in a world full of people who are sleepwalking. To understand why your mind never rests, we must take a scalpel to your past and look at the brutal neurobiology of what science calls hypervigilance. For many of you, this acute awareness is not a genetic gift. It is an inheritance of survival. It took root in an emotionally unstable environment, likely when you were a child. Imagine a child growing up in a house where the mood of the adults shifted as unpredictably as a violent storm. That child does not have the luxury of living innocently. To survive, they must become a human radar station. Perhaps you were the kind of child who memorized the exact sound of car tires rolling into the driveway, just so you could calculate whether the footsteps approaching the door were heavy with anger or light with peace. You learned to measure the exact velocity of a kitchen cabinet slamming. To gauge the hidden rage in the room, you knew exactly when to step into the light and smile, and exactly when to dissolve silently into the shadows. Biologically speaking, your amygdala, the primitive threat detection center of your brain, was permanently locked into the on position. It recorded a fundamental primal message: the environment is not safe. I must continuously scan the perimeter to predict the disaster before it hits. No one sat you down and taught you this. Your nervous system instinctively built an intricate, massive network of neurons designed to read the invisible, emotional weather of other people. And over the years, that survival mechanism calcified. The heavy iron shield that once protected you as a child has now fused directly into your adult skin. So, how does this massive, exhausting awareness manifest in your daily life today? It traps you in a state of perpetual analysis. Let's look at a real, clinical example. Your boss sends you a message at 4 p.m. that simply says, "Come see me for a minute." For a normal person, that is just a meeting. But for you, the moment your eyes read that text, a cold wave of adrenaline floods your system. You sense an invisible coldness and the lack of punctuation. You feel the atmosphere of the sender. You instantly begin running a hidden equation. Is he upset? Did I make a mistake? What did I say yesterday? Part of this phenomenon is driven by the default mode network, or DMN. In most people, this brain system activates only when they are daydreaming or resting. But in the overly aware, the DMN is constantly burning fuel, analyzing, reflecting, and interpreting. Half of your consciousness is nodding, smiling, and holding a cup of coffee. The other half is taking furious notes, comparing microscopic details, and bracing for impact. You feel physically exhausted after a day of sitting in a quiet office because your brain just finished running a hidden 10-hour marathon. But the true tragedy of this condition is that the analytical camera does not only point outward, it eventually turns inward, creating a suffocating state of metacognition. The act of constantly thinking about your own thinking. You do not just feel an emotion, you monitor it like a scientist observing a rat in a cage. You are walking outside, and suddenly a wave of melancholy hits you. Instead of simply letting the sadness exist, your prefrontal cortex immediately cross-examines it. Why am I sad? Does this sadness even make logical sense? I have a job. I have food. Why do I feel empty? I am terrible for feeling this way. Even your joy is dissected on the operating table. You laugh at a dinner party, but the very next second a piece of your consciousness floats up to the ceiling, looks down at you, and evaluates, did I laugh too loudly? Did that sound fake? You are trying to dance while constantly staring at your own feet in the mirror. You might not miss a step, but you entirely lose the rhythm of life. More than a century ago, the brilliant and tormented Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky looked directly into this specific psychological abyss. In his masterpiece, Notes from Underground, he wrote a line that perfectly encapsulates your silent agony. I swear, gentlemen, that to be too conscious is an illness, a real thoroughgoing illness. Dostoevsky understood the curse of the overly aware man. When your depth of vision is too sharp, you lose your relational innocence. Because you possess what psychology calls theory of mind to an extreme degree, you see the backstage of human behavior. You see a co-worker bring you coffee and praise your work, and instead of just saying thank you, your brain instantly scans for the hidden motive. What favor do they want? You realize that kindness usually comes with a barcode. You realize that a man's overconfidence is just a cheap curtain hiding his terror of inadequacy. As a result, compliments carry hidden weights. Apologies never feel entirely pure. Promises sound as fragile as dry glass. You do not hate the world. You have simply become incredibly, profoundly cautious. And because you see these hidden layers of truth that everyone else is blindly walking past, you feel agonizingly lonely. Even in a crowded room, this constant vigilance eventually bleeds into your physical body. Science calls this interoception, the ability to sense the internal state of your own body, processed by the insular cortex. People with hyper-awareness have an interoception system that is painfully sensitive. You drink a strong cup of coffee and your heart beats slightly faster. For an average person, that is just a caffeine buzz. But for your traumatized nervous system, the brain detects the elevated heart rate, flips frantically through its trauma archives, and sounds the alarm. Fast heartbeat equals danger. We are under attack. A normal physical sensation is instantly exaggerated into a full-blown panic response, flooding your body with cortisol. You feel restless, trapped, and on edge, constantly bracing for a disaster that never actually arrives. Why do you do this? Why do you allow your mind to run these endless, exhausting simulations of catastrophe? Because somewhere along the line, your awareness transformed from a tool of observation into a desperate strategy of control. You operate on a deeply flawed, unspoken belief. If I can predict every possible variable, if I can anticipate every betrayal, I will not be surprised by the pain. You use your over-awareness as armor. You believe that seeing the disappointment arriving from miles away will somehow prevent it from breaking your bones. But this is the grand illusion. This is analysis paralysis. By constantly living in 10 different terrifying versions of the future, by guarding the gates against ghosts that haven't even manifested, you completely evacuate the present moment. In your desperate attempt to stay ahead of the pain, you have slowly stepped entirely outside of your own life. It is time to drop the illusion. You cannot turn off your awareness. Asking you to stop analyzing the room is like asking a hawk to blur its own vision. But you can change how you wield it. We are going to transform this exhausting burden into the ultimate tactical advantage. We are moving from the panic of the prey to the cold detachment of the sovereign observer. You must establish absolute, impenetrable emotional boundaries within your own mind. You must learn the art of seeing everything, but absorbing absolutely nothing. First, realize that not every silence is a weapon forged against you. If someone replies slowly or walks past without a smile, it is rarely a hidden message. Often, they are just tired. Stop personalizing the random static of the world. Second, not every emotion that flares up in your chest requires an immediate investigation. When the anxiety hits, when the heart rate spikes, do not rush to analyze it. Look at it with cold, clinical detachment. Say to yourself, my heart is beating fast. It is just a chemical release. It means nothing. Observe the cortisol passing through your veins, but refuse to let it dictate your actions. Third, and most importantly, not every insight you have needs to be acted upon. You may clearly see someone's deep insecurity. You may spot the hidden manipulation in their words. But you do not have to step onto their stage. You do not have to be their therapist. And you do not have to be their victim. You can simply sit back in the shadows, watch the machinery of their deception turn, and smile. When you stop trying to control the outcome, your hyper-awareness ceases to be a curse. It becomes a superpower. You see the matrix, but you are no longer plugged into it. You move from fear to cold, calculated curiosity. You stop acting as a sponge for the world's emotional waste, and you become a mirror. If you are ready to stop carrying the heavy, exhausting weight of everyone else's unspoken thoughts, if you are ready to wield your vision as a weapon of quiet dominance rather than a shield of fear, I want you to go down into the comments right now and type one word: awake. Do not type it for the algorithm. Type it as an ironclad oath to your own nervous system. A declaration that you are no longer a victim of your own perception. Awake. Today you stopped fighting your own mind. You accepted the burden of sight, and you stepped out of the anxious current. You became the silent observer of the room, but as you pour your energy back and detach from the emotional noise of the crowd, you will face a new, terrifying quiet. When the noise of other people's problems fades away, you will finally hear the one voice you have been drowning out for years, your own, and what that voice has to say about the life you are currently living. That is our next Drew.